and he decided he liked her. He loved her. He wanted her to be his wife. She was ripped away from her family, her community. She couldn't even eat normal food. She was forced into a vegan diet in order to observe the rules of kashrus. Where was the hand of God in her life? Did she see it? You know how much pain she was in? Hey everybody, it's a brand new week and I wanted to sit and have a schmooze with you. Shabbos went out a few hours ago and I said, you know what, maybe my thoughts that I had over Shabbos would be interesting for you. So if you like this content, leave a comment below and I'll try to make these schmoozes happen every week. Bli neder, I'm not going to promise. One of the things I was thinking about over Shabbos is a comment that somebody left on one of my videos. I saw tremendous pain inside of this comment. The person wrote that they left idolatry, they left Christianity behind. But it was through Christianity that they really felt an emotional connection. And now they're not feeling it in the same way. I felt a lot of pain for this person. And my response to her really could be summed up in 3 words. Kol dema medaka. What do I mean? In 1 Kings chapter 19, verses 11 and 12, we see a story about Elijah who is having a vision. And in this vision, there's this huge wind that comes along, but God was not in the wind. And then there's an earthquake that comes along, but God was not in the earthquake. And then there's a fire that comes along, but God was not in the fire. And then, kol dema medaka, a still small voice is heard. And that's when Elijah realizes, oh, now I'm in the presence of God, and he covers his face. You see, people think that God is always found in the loudest, the most vibrant, the most exuberant experience out there. People think like, oh, when I have these moments of elevation, these emotional rushes, that's where we find God. But that's not true. There can be moments of true inspiration. And when that happens, that's very appreciated. That is something that should serve to bounce us along, to keep us invigorated. But an emotional experience is not indicative of a true religion. And in fact, the Bible warns us, don't go after your heart because you can be led astray to serve the gods of others. You can't rely upon the emotional experience to serve as your indicator of what is true or not. Only the Bible can be our guide in this area. And if religious claims don't match up, then that means that we're forbidden to believe that. We're forbidden to trust that emotional experience. You see, we can find God in that quiet dedication, that little voice that keeps urging us on, that little voice that says, you know you're living morally, you know that you're living according to the dictates that God gave you. That is what you're supposed to be doing, even if you're not feeling this rush of emotion. Keep on, power on, steady, determined, devoted. There's something so precious about that and something so true about that. Because this world is a world of concealment. We don't always feel godliness all around us. We have to search for it. We have to seek it out. And sometimes it's so hidden for us. And you know, one of the women that I think about a lot, one of the great leaders inside of the Tanakh, one of the most powerful Jewish women to have ever lived, is Esther HaMalka, Queen Esther from the book of Esther. You know, this is a book that's very short and you could really read it in 1 hour and you could walk away thinking, okay, very nice story. But when you get down, you start examining the Hebrew, and when you really start examining who Esther HaMalka was and what she went through, your mind can be blown. According to Jewish tradition, Esther HaMalka was married to Mordechai, and she was ripped away from him. And she was taken and she was forced into a harem with many other women against her will. And this megalomaniac monster murderer, Achashverosh, he went and he slept with all these women, and then he took her, and against her will, he forced her to have relations with him. He violated her, and he decided he liked her. He loved her. He wanted her to be his wife. And she was forced to become his wife against her will. She was ripped away from her family, her community. She couldn't even eat normal food. She was forced into a vegan diet in order to observe the rules of kashrus. She led a miserable life. My gosh, this poor woman suffered so intensely. Where was the hand of God in her life? Did she see it? You know how much pain she was in? And even though the Megillah takes about an hour to read, these events were spread out over the course of more than a decade. And what's most important for you to note is that even after the Megillah was written, Esther Hamalka was still Achashverosh's prisoner. She still lived with him. She couldn't escape. And that's one of the reasons that the book of Esther doesn't speak of Achashverosh in the worst of terms, because Achashverosh had access to this book. It was written when Esther Hamalka was still living together with him. She was his forced prisoner. She had no choice in the matter. When a decree was issued against the Jewish people that they would all be destroyed, Mordechai Tzaddik sent a message to Esther and told her, he said, perhaps it's for this moment that you were created. Perhaps all this craziness happened in order to place you inside a position where you could actually effect this decree. He said, if you don't want to do the job, salvation is going to come through somebody else. But your life circumstance pushed you into this position, and now the only choice that you have is to either do what God wants or to not do what God wants, to try to save your people or to ignore it. You see, that's the thing with life. We don't choose our circumstances. We think we have some amount of control over our life. We really don't. Everything is b'shert. Everything is divinely ordained. Which family we're born into, what we look like, how old we are, where we live, who we marry, what our kids are like, any health issues that we have, whatever it is, all of this was decreed for us. The only true free choice that we have is, are we going to behave morally? Are we going to accept our mission? Are we going to go forward in life despite anything that bothers us, despite the pain? And this, even taking into context the good things that we have. Are we going to use the good things that we're given for our benefit or not? The only choice we have is to behave morally or not. So Esther Malka stepped up to the challenge. She said, I'm going to do the right thing. And through her, tremendous miracles were wrought. But it didn't come easily, it didn't come quickly, and it came with tremendous, tremendous pain. There are so many times in life that we don't feel the hand of God, that we don't see God. There's so many times we ask ourselves, why? And I'm no different. There are times that I stop and I look at my life and I say, why? The question, though, is, can we look at it through the lens of, for what purpose was I put here? Perhaps my purpose has to do with the pain. Perhaps I can change that pain in some way or use that pain in some way. Perhaps there's something I'm supposed to fix in the situation. Or is it just a kvetch? Is it a, why am I here? Why did God put me in this circumstance? The question is how are we asking the question? Are we going to embrace the mission? Or are we not? That's really our only choice. So it is true that sometimes we don't feel this overwhelming rush of emotions. We don't see godliness in everything. That is the difficulty of this life. We're not living in the desert. We're not getting manna descending from heaven on a daily basis. We're not witnessing these great, gigantic miracles. That's normal. That's life in this world at this moment in time. And hopefully there's going to come a time very soon when we're not going to see open and revealed miracles. And we're all going to be blown away. And the knowledge of God is going to cover the earth very, very quickly. And all of us will just be elevated in our servitude. But if you're struggling to see the hand of God, if you're struggling to feel God's presence, know that everybody feels that way at times. You're not alone. You're not alone. But keep searching, keep seeking. Keep seeking to serve. That's where you're going to find God. Wishing you a wonderful week.